Revenge with Karen. I knew something was off when I found a stack of unsigned I-9s shoved behind the office microwave, next to 3 petrified bagels, and what might have once been a lemon. That was the moment I realized the new HR regime wasn't just sloppy, they were radioactive stupid. You ever see an HR director bold enough to use a glitter pen on a federal document? I have. Her name was Tasha, and her motto was "Done is better than perfect." It sounded cute until it meant hiring someone whose social security number was 1 digit short. No joke, he got through onboarding because someone assumed the last digit was probably a typo. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before the chaos rolled in like a corporate tsunami made of Axe body spray and bad PowerPoints, life was quiet. I'd been with Argonex Solutions for 12 years, longer than most of the C-suite combined. Compliance coordinator wasn't flashy, but it fit me like my grandma's quilted cardigans, functional, overlooked, and tougher than they looked. My desk was always neat, my filing system a work of obsessive art. I had a color code for everything: green for clean, yellow for follow-up, red for someone's getting a call from Homeland Security if this crap isn't fixed. Nobody really noticed me, and honestly, that was fine. I didn't need to be Employee of the Month. I just needed our onboarding files to pass federal audits, so we didn't get steamrolled by a surprise visit from the Department of Labor. Argonex was a mid-sized tech logistics firm with big ambitions and a revolving door of hiring managers. It wasn't unusual for recruiters to send over incomplete documentation, missing IDs, unsigned W-4s, resumes that looked like they were written during a bar fight. I'd flag them, fix what I could, quietly send polite reminders. I was the human lint roller catching what everyone else dropped. Sometimes I wondered if I should push harder. But when you've got a decade of being ignored under your belt, you learn the art of strategic silence. You don't scream, you don't escalate, you document. And when needed, you wait, like a crocodile in a swamp of corporate mediocrity. Speaking of waiting, I know 93% of folks listening to these stories aren't subscribed yet. So if you're enjoying this, hit that button and throw us a like. Seriously, it doesn't cost a dime, but it keeps our team caffeinated, sarcastic, and dangerously productive. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around for how this one ends. Back to Karen. I wasn't the hero. I wasn't the villain. I was the woman who knew the difference between a Form I-9 and a Form W-9 blindfolded and under anesthesia. I had 3 binders in my office labeled just in case, and I wasn't even joking. Most folks spent their days building slide decks or faking enthusiasm at stand-ups. Me, I was the last line of defense between Argonex and a $250,000 slap from Uncle Sam. The thing is, when you do your job too well, become invisible, nobody thanks the seatbelt until the crash. They just complain it's too tight. Then Tasha arrived, flouncing in like a Pinterest board come to life, clipboard, fake lashes, and all. She called herself a people-first futurist, which I assumed was code for I delete mandatory training emails. She didn't know the difference between a re-verification and a rehire, but she had opinions. Oh, did she have opinions? I thought my email templates were too formal. She thought audits were paranoia with Excel sheets. She wanted onboarding done in 24 hours, no questions asked. And me, I was a speed bump on her runway to streamline success. Still, in those early days, I held my ground. I corrected her mistakes quietly, resubmitted bad files without throwing blame, and stayed in my lane. I told myself, she's new, she'll learn. But somewhere deep down, had that little prickle at the base of my skull, the kind you get before a thunderstorm hits. The air changes, everything's too quiet. And when quiet's all you've ever known, you feel the shift in your bones. I didn't know it then, but I was already documenting my own exit strategy. Not because I wanted out, but because I knew, eventually, the sky was going to fall. And when it did, I'd be holding the only umbrella. Tasha blew in like a scented tornado, loud, fast, reeking of lavender essential oils and overconfidence. First day on the job, she wore stilettos to a warehouse site visit. By lunch, she'd already rebranded the HR department as People and Culture, hung an inspirational quote on the breakroom Keurig, and scheduled a mandatory joy circle for Friday. She hadn't even figured out where we stored the onboarding packets. She was already preaching speed over structure like she'd invented human resources on a damn vision board. Karen, she cooed during our first one-on-one, I love your passion, but we don't need every I-9 perfect on day one. Let's be real, Nobody gets deported anymore. I blinked so hard my contact lens almost shot out of my eye. That wasn't a red flag. It was a goddamn 6-lane freeway of disaster. I told her calmly, actually, 9 audits result in millions in fines each year, especially for companies like us scaling aggressively. She tilted her head like a confused golden retriever. Yeah, but isn't that just paperwork stuff? We'll fix it later. I'm prioritizing agility. Speed is the new compliance. Speed is the new compliance. That phrase should have been carved on a headstone, because from that moment on, I knew Argonex's HR department was headed straight for a federal meat grinder, and Tasha was lubing the gears with corporate buzzwords and blind optimism. She started implementing what she called streamlined onboarding. What it actually meant was bypassing review steps entirely. She slashed the 3-day file completion window to 24 hours, removed the ID verification checklist, encouraged recruiters to keep things moving, even if documentation was missing or mismatched. One new hire's passport literally expired 2 years ago. She approved it because, and I quote, he seemed trustworthy. I raised concerns. Of course I did. I emailed her a gentle breakdown of the federal requirements with bullet points and citations. I highlighted 3 cases where other companies had been fined for the exact shortcuts she was taking. I even attached an ICE audit summary. Her reply, appreciate the notes, Karen, but this is the new normal. We're a growth company now. Think less gatekeeping, more green lighting. She CC'd our VP of People on that response. I knew what that meant. She wanted it on record that she was coaching the old-school compliance dinosaur. Me, the dinosaur. Still, I wasn't looking to start a war. Not yet. I simply replied, understood. Please note that I'm documenting these changes for future reference. No threats. No drama. Just a sentence cold enough to put a chill in your spine if you were smart enough to recognize it. Boiler, Tasha wasn't. By the end of her 2nd week, she was hosting onboarding power sessions where she encouraged new hires to skip the red tape and promised they'd get badges and logins same day. The receptionist came to me in a panic after 3 contractors showed up without IDs and asked where they could pick up their parking passes. One of them didn't even know what department he was in. I checked the system. None of them had completed Section 1 of the I-9 and didn't even have a file. I brought it up again, not in front of others, not with attitude, just a calm conversation behind closed doors. Tasha, we're approving employees who haven't provided legal work authorization. This is serious. She smiled, sipped her kombucha, and said, Karen, you're brilliant, but you worry too much. The world isn't going to end over a couple missing documents. We'll circle back. That's when I realized she wasn't just clueless, she was dangerous. She was operating under the delusion that charm and speed could outrun liability. Unfortunately, the government doesn't accept charisma in lieu of compliance. Tasha had the full support of our leadership team, who were too busy chasing investor capital to bother with process. They loved her energy, her can-do attitude, and the way she made everything seem like it would work itself out. She called me detailed to a fault in a team meeting. Like that was a bad thing. I didn't argue, I didn't pout. I went back to my desk, opened a fresh folder, and labeled it HR Overrides Q3. I was annoyed, I was cautious. But most of all, I was awake now. And I had a feeling the storm was just getting started. It started with a single override. A temp hire named Ryan, no passport, no social security card, not even a driver's license. His only submitted document was a grainy photo of a college ID from 2009, taken with a cracked phone screen and uploaded sideways. I flagged it, of course. Left the status incomplete in the system. Made a note, pending verification, no valid ID, standard procedure. By lunch, his status had flipped to approved. No documentation added, no notes. Just a quiet override from someone with admin access. That someone was Tasha. Confronted her after our weekly HR sync. No drama, no raised voice, just a calm question. Hey, quick thing, I noticed Ryan's I-9 was approved without any verification docs. That's not compliant, she didn't even blink. Yeah, I handled it. We needed him on the floor ASAP. He'll bring the rest later. I just stared at her. Tasha, that's not how the law works. She smiled like I was a toddler refusing to share crayons. Karen, building momentum. Don't let perfection get in the way of progress. That was the beginning of the override spree. One by one, files I had flagged were flipped. Hires missing documentation were marked complete. My system logs showed her credentials doing it. I kept copies, every single one. The next week, she pulled me from 2 onboarding workflows entirely, claimed it was to eliminate redundancy. I wasn't copied on new hire emails anymore. Access to certain folders vanished overnight. I submitted a ticket to IT, got a one-line response, change requested by HR director. That's when I realized I wasn't just being ignored, I was being erased. It all came to a head in a meeting I will never forget. Monday morning, HR conference room. 4 of us sitting around a table that still smelled like someone had spilled lunch-grade Caesar salad on it over the weekend. Tasha pulled up her little clicky PowerPoint deck, hiring velocity metrics Q3 targets. She was glowing like she'd cracked the Da Vinci Code with a pie chart. "We're cutting onboarding time by 38%, she chirped, pointing to a bar graph like it proved we were curing cancer. "Karen, we need all hands rowing the same direction. That means no more nitpicking. Just approve what you're told to approve." I swear to God, I felt my blood freeze. Room went silent for a second, just long enough for her words to hang in the air like a fart in an elevator. I looked at her, slowly, like I was trying to decide whether she was joking or just genuinely allergic to law. "That's not how federal compliance works," I said. She laughed. "Oh, Karen, you're so by the book. It's adorable." That word, adorable. I almost bit through my tongue. The rest of the team, newer HR reps, still green, shifted awkwardly in their chairs. One guy started fidgeting with his pen like he was trying to tunnel out of the room with it. No one backed me up, not out loud. I knew then that I was alone. Not in the physical sense I was in a room full of people, but I was the only one who gave a damn about what this could cost us, what it could cost them, but no one wanted to hear it. Tasha was their golden goose. She made hiring go faster. She made things easier. And me was the fossil standing in the way of the conveyor belt, so I stopped talking. I walked out of that meeting, went back to my desk, and opened a new folder on my desktop, Compliance Deviations Tasha Overrides. I copied every override log I could find, every approval timestamp, every internal message where I raised concerns and was brushed off. I took screenshots, exported Slack threads, even started logging who else had access to certain systems, not because I wanted revenge, because I knew exactly where this train was headed. And when it derailed, I didn't want anyone pretending they hadn't seen the signs. You don't win these battles by shouting louder. You win them by making damn sure the record outlives the gaslighting. And mine was just beginning. By October, my desk looked less like a workspace and more like a war bunker built out of spreadsheets, backup drives, printouts with color-coded sticky notes that could give a traffic light a stroke. I didn't eat lunch at my desk anymore. I archived it, labeled and time-stamped, just in case Tasha ever accused me of not being present during the 12:15 override of a missing work permit. I wasn't fighting back. Not openly. But I was preparing like I expected the whole damn building to explode and didn't want my fingerprints on any of the shrapnel. Every email that mentioned fast tracking or skip verification got saved to my personal encrypted USB stick, tucked inside a dead battery case, hidden in my pencil holder. Every Slack thread where I flagged noncompliance and got ghosted, exported. Every time a document approval timestamp showed up before a new hire even finished orientation, logged. If someone coughed near an I-9, I had the time, date, and probable viral load noted somewhere. It was the quietest war you've ever seen. No shouting, no confrontations, just silence and clicks, mouse, keyboard, camera shutter. I started snapping photos of physical files before they disappeared. I noticed documents getting signed in blue ink, then rescanned and re-uploaded in black. Subtle, but important. You learn to see things in layers when you work in compliance long enough. Truth, lies, and the thin corporate laminate trying to cover them up got darker when I realized it wasn't just 1 or 2 slip-ups. It was systemic. Contractors, plural, had been brought on without completing Section 2 of their I-9s. Some didn't even have valid IDs. One guy submitted a library card and a screenshot of his Venmo profile, and it passed. Tasha approved it herself with the note, close enough. I ran a report, just for myself, cross-checking onboarding completion dates against system login records. That's how I found at least 7 people with active credentials who were legally ghosts. No presence verification, no supporting docs. In the eyes of the law, they weren't even here, which made what we were doing not just wrong, but criminal. I couldn't sleep right after that. Not because I was afraid for myself, hell. I'd been through 2 buyouts, 3 rounds of layoffs, and 1 office fire caused by someone microwaving foil. I could survive. No, I couldn't sleep because I was watching a slow-motion train wreck from the conductor's seat, and no one else even noticed we'd jumped the rails. Then came the whisper. I was in the copy room, replacing the toner that Tasha didn't believe we needed a budget line for. Just use black pens if it's out, Karen, when I heard two recruiters talking. Quiet, but not quiet enough. You hear about Cody? What, the contractor from Phoenix? Yeah, he's pissed. They told him he was being converted full-time and then ghosted him. He's threatening to report the company for hiring fraud. My stomach turned. Cody. I remembered Cody. His onboarding was one of the earliest I flagged. Expired ID. No work authorization follow-up. The recruiter swore he'd fix it. Tasha told me to get out of the weeds. If Cody went to the Department of Labor, that wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was a federal audit with a six-figure price tag and potential criminal exposure. And the best part? His file was already compromised. Nothing I could do would fix it now, but I sure as hell could protect myself. I went back to my desk, exported everything I had on Cody's file, every version, every override, every message, printed the whole thing and put it in my break glass in case of subpoena drawer. That drawer now had 8 folders. Cody was just the latest name on the hit list. Anxiety doesn't even begin to cover it. I'd always played by the rules, always kept my nose clean. But now I was standing knee-deep in someone else's sewage with a mop and a body cam, praying I wouldn't be the one left holding the bucket when the inspectors came knocking. Still, I didn't escalate. I didn't forward my reports to legal. Not yet. Because in places like Argonex, you don't win by yelling fire. Win by building a fireproof box and sitting inside it while everyone else pretends the smoke is a vibe. I wasn't panicking. I was documenting every word, every keystroke, every decision Tasha made that moved us closer to the edge. Because I knew it was coming. I just didn't know how soon. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of gray, soul-leeching Midwestern afternoon where even the vending machine seemed too tired to drop your Funyuns. Inbox dinged with a calendar invite from Tasha, titled Urgent. End-of-quarter hiring push action required. I clicked it, already bracing myself for another round of compliance whack-a-mole. When I entered the HR war room, which used to be the nap pod room before someone caught pink eye, the mood was frantic. Recruiters were pounding Red Bulls, laptops were overheating, and someone had drawn a speedometer on the whiteboard labeled hiring velocity. It was pegged to the max, naturally. Tasha clapped her hands like a kindergarten teacher about to ruin your life. Okay, team, here's the deal. We've got 17 contractors starting Monday. That means we need I-9s processed today. Not tomorrow, not later, today. I raised my hand like a high school student trying not to get assigned weekend detention. Have the documents been verified? She didn't even look up from her iPad. Most of them have something on file. A few are pending, but we'll circle back. I held her gaze. Tasha, if Section 2 isn't completed with verified ID, they can't legally be onboarded. Circling back isn't an option. Now she looked up, smiling like a rattlesnake sunbathing on a church pew. Karen, you're the only one slowing us down. Approve the batch. It's all uploaded. Just click the damn button. She said it in front of everyone. No subtlety, no finesse. Just uncut condescension. I didn't argue, didn't sigh. I walked back to my desk, opened the system, and reviewed each of the 17 files. 8 were missing work authorizations. 3 had completely blank Section 1s. 1 had a scanned receipt from a USPS package instead of a driver's license. I left all 17 approvals blank. Then I opened a new email. To HR, CC'd legal. Subject line, I-9 compliance concerns Q4 hiring batch, short and sharp. I outlined each non-compliant entry, cited the federal regulations, included links, screenshots, timestamps. I finished it with one line, per federal compliance policy, I cannot approve these files as submitted. I hit send, sat back, and stared at the ceiling for a long, long time. 5 minutes later, Tasha replied, all bubbly punctuation and manufactured sunshine, all set. Thanks for your input, that emoji at the end. Might as well have been a middle finger wearing lipstick. I copied the entire thread to my drive, saved each version as a PDF, uploaded a backup to a secure personal folder. Then I opened a second tab and typed Compliance Coordinator Remote Jobs into the search bar. I wasn't sad, not anymore. I was just done. You spend a decade holding the line, trying to keep the floodgates from snapping. One day you realize everyone behind you is busy building boats for themselves, out of shredded policy manuals and broken promises. I had fought the quiet war. Now I was walking off the battlefield, calm, uninjured, but fully aware the bomb had already been planted. I didn't know when it would go off. I just knew the blast radius wouldn't reach me, because everything I needed was already in the record. Every override, every reply, every Slack message with a winking emoji after someone approved a file labeled TBD. All of it stacked neatly in a folder labeled defense. A few hours later, I updated my resume, called a recruiter I knew from a past audit training. By the next week, I had 2 interviews lined up. One with a firm that didn't think speed was worth federal exposure. The other with a Fortune 100 company that valued risk mitigation like it was printed on gold leaf. They didn't know it yet at Argonex, but I'd already left the building. Sure, I still swiped in. I still answered emails, but I was gone, disconnected, not just emotionally, strategically. And Tasha? She was too busy high-fiving the CEO over Q4 headcount stats to notice the depth of the hole she was digging. I didn't need to fight anymore. All I had to do was wait. I handed in my resignation on a Tuesday, exactly 1 month after the just click the damn button incident. No fireworks, no exit interview, no parting sheet cake with a crooked "We'll miss you, Karen" written in frosting from a gas station bakery. Just a 1-paragraph email to HR, a 2-week notice, and a smile so calm it made Tasha twitch. I didn't take anything from my desk except my cardigan, my ceramic mug with the phrase "Trust," but Verify printed on it, my unopened emergency Pop-Tarts. Left the compliance posters on the wall. Let her feel the silence when I was gone. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a glass-walled office with a skyline view, a company laptop that didn't require 3 restarts to open Outlook, and a salary bump so decent it made me laugh out loud when I saw the offer letter. My new firm didn't call compliance a necessary evil. They called it business armor. Asked for my risk mitigation playbooks during the second interview. They offered to fly me out to DC for a federal summit before I'd even signed the papers. It was everything Argonex had never been: respectful, strategic, sane. I didn't look back, didn't check in on anyone, didn't stalk the company LinkedIn. I was out. I had won. Then, 3.5 weeks after my last day, my phone rang. A number I recognized from the old office but hadn't saved. For a moment, I considered letting it ring. Curiosity won out. "Karen, hey, it's Lindsay from HR." Her voice was tight, too chipper, like someone trying to keep calm while hiding in a closet during a home invasion. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, staring out a skyline that didn't have a single moldy drop ceiling tile in sight. "Hi, Lindsay. Everything okay?" A long pause. Then she whispered it like we were being surveilled. Did you keep any records?" My smile was involuntary, reflexive, deep in the bones. Records of what, exactly? Another pause. I could almost hear her swallowing. There's a situation. Someone, maybe a former contractor, filed a complaint with the Department of Labor. There's going to be an audit. They said it's about onboarding procedures. I thought maybe you'd know. I let the silence do the work. The truth was, I knew all of it. Whistleblower was likely Cody, or one of the other walking HR violations we'd paraded through onboarding like it was a carnival game. The audit was inevitable, just like I'd warned. And the records, of course I had them, all of them, stored securely, cross-referenced, time-stamped, ironclad. But that wasn't her business anymore. "I'm afraid I can't advise on internal matters," I said finally, keeping my voice smooth as glass. "Best of luck, though." She thanked me, voice cracking like a dropped plate, and hung up. I didn't gloat, didn't call anyone, didn't text a friend or post a vague, smug LinkedIn update about watching the consequences of unchecked arrogance unfold. I didn't need to. I had done my part. I'd warned them, documented everything. And when the time came, I walked clean, calm, and carrying a digital library of receipts no one could refute. They were panicking. I wasn't. In the weeks that followed, I heard murmurs, through mutual contacts, through LinkedIn posts with suddenly updated job titles. Tasha had gone radio silent. Recruiters from Argonex were restructuring. Legal had stepped in. But no one dared say my name, because the moment they did, they'd have to admit who kept the company out of prison for as long as it stayed upright. I didn't light the fire, but I was the one who handed them the fire extinguisher, watched them trade it in for a scented candle and a vision board. They say ghosts haunt the places where they were forgotten. That's not true. Real ghosts show up in meetings they didn't attend, in inboxes they don't control, and in policy documents no one thought they'd ever need again, until it's far too late. It started with an emergency compliance meeting, unscheduled, 7:15 a.m. Every legal and HR face on deck. CEO showed up still wearing his golf pullover, jaw tight, eyes bloodshot like someone had just read him his own autopsy. The audit was real, not a drill. The Department of Labor had sent over a formal request for I-9 documentation for 32 employees. Some still worked there. Some had vanished without a trace. No valid ID on file, no signatures, not even a timestamp to prove when they were supposedly verified. Tasha didn't show up to the meeting. Whether she was working remotely or just hiding under her desk in the wellness room was unclear. Either way, legal was running the show now. And the tone wasn't upbeat. A junior HR rep, new, scared, and still clinging to her personalized mug like it could ward off demons, pulled up a folder in the shared drive. She'd been combing through old compliance threads for anything useful. And there it was. Subject: I-9 compliance concerns Q4 hiring batch. Karen's final email. It wasn't just a flag. It was a roadmap. A fully laid out, professionally structured, timestamp breakdown of every legal misstep tied to those 32 names. Citations pulled directly from the Department of Homeland Security Handbook. Links to official verification guidelines. Cross-referenced logs showing exactly when Tasha overrode the entries and who was CC'd when she did it. Karen hadn't written a warning. She'd written a legal life raft. The room went silent. Someone from legal leaned forward, scrolling through the email slowly like it was a sacred text. She documented the overrides. She timestamped everything. Another lawyer added, "This email may be the only thing keeping us from a deeper liability exposure." The CEO ran a hand down his face like he was trying to erase his own expression. She didn't approve the files? No, legal said. She explicitly refused and documented it multiple times. Then came the line that would echo around the office like a funeral bell. "Where is she now?" No one answered, not because they didn't know, but because they did. Karen was gone. She'd walked out without a fuss. No raised voice, no farewell speech, no flaming bridge in her rearview mirror. Just calm, measured silence, a meticulously archived library of truth they'd ignored until the moment it became the only thing standing between them and a federal lawsuit. Suddenly, people were saying her name again. The same people who had once called her too rigid, too cautious, not a culture fit. They were digging through old folders trying to find more of her notes. Whispering her name in the hallway like kids, scared the substitute teacher might return with a ruler and a vengeance. Someone tried to slack her. Another sent a sheepish LinkedIn message. Neither got a reply. The IT director checked system logs and confirmed the obvious. Karen hadn't logged in since her final day. Her shared folders were archived, her email deactivated, but her fingerprints were still everywhere. Her notes, her protocols, her risk matrices. She'd become the invisible backbone again, only now they felt the ache where she used to be. Tasha, radio silent. Word was she'd lawyered up. Her name was being scrubbed from internal memos faster than coffee pods vanished in the break room. And Karen, she was just a ghost. But the kind you miss when everything starts burning down. The kind who left behind a flashlight, a fire map, and a told you so in 12-point Times New Roman. She didn't need to be in the room. Her documentation already was. The boardroom was dead silent, kind of silence that settles in only after everyone realizes they've collectively stepped in something they can't scrape off. Not just a mistake, but a legacy-defining failure with a paper trail. The CEO stood at the head of the polished walnut table, holding a single printed email in his hand like it was an unsealed verdict. His usual corporate bravado gone. No jokes. No golf anecdotes, just the sound of his throat clearing as he adjusted his glasses and began to read. It was Karen's email, the final one. He read it aloud, line by line, like scripture for the damned. Per federal compliance policy, I cannot approve these files as submitted. These entries do not meet I-9 verification standards, as defined by USCIS Regulation 8 CFR 274A.2. Overrides have been applied without proper ID validation. Attached logs. Each sentence landed like a gavel. Polite, clinical, lethal. The timestamp was there, so were the CCs, legal, HR, Tasha, and the attachments, the attachments. Screenshots of missing IDs, logs of Tasha's override activity. A spreadsheet mapping each flagged entry to the corresponding federal guideline they violated. Karen hadn't just written an email. She'd built a compliance bomb shelter and left the door unlocked for them to find, too late, but still standing. When the CEO reached the bottom of the email, he just held it there in the air, like he didn't know what to do with his hands anymore. She didn't approve any of it, he said finally. She flagged every single one. Silence. No one blinked. The head of legal leaned forward, resting both elbows on the table like he was anchoring himself to keep from floating into panic. This record, he said, tapping the page twice, be the only thing keeping us from criminal exposure. If she had approved even one of those hires, we'd be staring down willful negligence. Someone near the back of the table, the CFO, maybe, or one of the newer board members who hadn't yet learned how to hide discomfort, asked, "So what happens now?" Legal didn't answer right away. He just looked around the table, then back at the printout. "Now, we try to survive this." Another board member spoke up, woman with sharp eyebrows and a reputation for slicing budgets like a deli counter samurai. "Can we shift blame to Tasha?" Legal blinked once. Tasha's name is on the approvals. Karen's name is on the warnings, and if Tasha refuses to speak, then Karen's email is the record. They all sat there for a moment, digesting the cold clarity of it. Karen hadn't fought anyone. She hadn't shouted, filed a grievance, or dragged anyone through HR. She'd simply done her job, followed the rules, documented the violations. And when she was told to stand down, she did, while preserving every ounce of truth in a format so clean, even a federal investigator could read it like an instruction manual. The irony was thick enough to spread on toast. The woman they called a bottleneck, the one they pushed out to make way for scalability, was now the only reason they weren't bleeding out in the press or facing federal charges. The room felt colder, like her absence had finally crystallized into something they could feel, something heavier than regret: accountability. No one asked where she was now, they all knew. Karen had left, gracefully, silently, completely. But she hadn't burned the bridge. She just took all the rope with her, and now they were hanging from what was left. The book they ignored, the one they called outdated, now it was open. On the table, with her initials at the bottom of every page. They were the ones flipping through it, hoping to find a loophole where there wasn't one. The moment came without fanfare. No slamming fists, no dramatic walkouts, no shouts. Just a question dropped into the stale, boardroom air like a scalpel through silk. The CEO looked up from the printout, eyes scanning every face in the room, then landing on the one person who hadn't spoken since the meeting began. Who approved this override? The silence was immediate. Dense. Tasha's mouth opened, but for once, nothing came out. Her voice, the one that used to command rooms with buzzwords and bullet points, was suddenly nowhere to be found. She looked around for an ally, someone to throw her a lifeline, but all she found were stone faces and dropped gazes. The head of legal cleared his throat. "Based on these logs," he said, tapping the stack of Karen's exported system activity reports, the approvals were done under Tasha's login credentials. Timestamped, unreviewed, against internal policy and federal guidelines. Tasha finally found her voice, but it cracked on the way out. I thought Karen, she was supposed to, legal didn't let her finish." Karen explicitly declined to approve. She sent formal written objections. She copied legal. Her compliance trail is airtight. The CEO didn't yell, didn't curse, just nodded slowly and said, "Begin the termination paperwork and bring in external counsel." Now, Tasha sat back in her chair, hollow-eyed, her career bleeding out in front of everyone she'd tried to impress. She didn't cry. She didn't argue, because there was nothing left to say. The quiet one, the woman she'd called outdated, rigid, a roadblock, had already spoken. Months ago, on record, with perfect precision. It wasn't revenge, it was truth, and it cut deeper. Across town, a corner office 3 stories above a skyline that didn't smell like desperation, and expired toner, Karen was finishing her first performance audit for a Fortune 100 client. Lexington and Gray Consulting had handed her a title with 3 words and 2 commas, a signing bonus big enough to pay off her car, and a team that asked for her opinion like it mattered, because it did. Her inbox pinged. LinkedIn message. "Hi, Karen. I know things ended awkwardly, but I've always respected your diligence. We're revisiting our compliance structure and would love to talk. Would you be open to returning in a senior leadership role?" She stared at it for a moment, not with anger, not even with satisfaction, just quiet awareness. They were finally learning the value of what they had thrown away. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. She leaned back in her ergonomic chair, took a sip of her Earl Grey, and smiled just slightly. The kind of smile that says, "I warned you, I waited, and now I'm exactly where I need to be." No burned bridges, no dramatic takedowns, just clean, clear documentation and a silence sharp enough to cut careers in half. She hadn't needed to make noise to win. She just needed the record. And now, it was doing all the talking. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.